It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, over the weekend, it was a holiday weekend. We had another ransom attack, right? We all saw it. I wrote an article about it. I put it out there on LinkedIn. I realize a lot of people don't like to talk about, these things, especially when private equity is involved, because you could tell by the crickets. You could tell by all the in-mails that I got. Hey, Ray, this is a great topic, great article. I'm thinking to myself, it was so great. It's such a great article. Why don't you put a comment on it? Why don't you share your point of view? Because, folks, if we can't talk about this, we're never going to fix the problem. And honestly, I don't blame these people for not wanting to be public about their views in private equity owning most of the cybersecurity organizations around the world. Because private equity owns most of the security organizations around the world. And so how do you go in there and talk about your boss? I find it ironic that we're sitting here listening to the CEO of Kaseya. So we know that, they were the latest ones that were hacked. And, I'm thinking to myself, well, you're talking to the manager. You ought to be talking to the owners. Why is it that nobody's interviewing the private equity people? Where are they at? They're the ones that threw all the money at this. They're the ones that, do loans and do all the things they do. So where are they at in the story? And folks, I think we need to start paying attention and we need to start asking, where's private equity at in the story? Back when the SolarWinds breach happened, who were we talking to? Were we talking to Tomo Bravo and the other private equity players? With the Kaseya breach, are we talking to Insights Partners? TPG? Are we talking to these folks? We should be, maybe, right? I mean, aren't they the ones paying the bills? Aren't they the ones that decide whether or not to do a leveraged loan, pay themselves a dividend, and saddle the organizations with the debt? Sounds a little cold and callous, doesn't it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is. Private equity is in business to make money, and private equity has a place. I'm not knocking private equity. My question, the question that I brought up in that article was simple. Should we allow private equity to fight a war against folks like our evil? Folks, here's the reality. Something if everybody needs to think about. What happens when the investors decide that cybersecurity is way too risky? Way too risky because the bad guys like our evil are winning. And the investors start thinking, you know what, I thought this would be a good idea to do this investment, but you know what, with all these hacks and bad press, we're out. What happens when they just say we're out? Folks, we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out, and I put a slide together because I think maybe it'll hit home with some of y'all. What if private equity owned the military? I mean, cybersecurity is a war, right? It's a war, folks. We're in a war against bad actors. Bad actors that are allegedly backed by governments. So if we're in a war against bad actors, what weapons are we using? Like I said, could you imagine if private equity owned the military? Our friends over at Tomo Bravo, they got together and with some other private equity folks, and they said, hey, we want to buy, we want to buy the 1st Cavalry Division. We want to buy that division from you. We're gonna turn it profitable. We don't need to buy new weapons. Well, we'll wait till next year. We got to get a better ROI. You see why you have to have some things that are built for protection, not for profit. And we have to ask ourselves a question. This is a question that a lot of people aren't going to like to answer or even think about. Is it time to think about cybersecurity more about protection than profit? And if the answer is yes to that question, how do we do it? Most of us would agree that anytime the government gets involved in anything, it kind of screws it all up. It kind of drags it out. That was one comment I got on my post. The government gets involved in these things, and it could take forever. Cybersecurity is so fluid. How in the world could the government ever manage that? Folks, here's the reality. We better figure this shit out. We better figure it out. We better figure out how we put a task force together that makes sense. We better figure out how we have an oversight that makes sense. We better figure out rules that MSPs have to follow. We better figure out rules that master service providers have to follow. We better figure out rules that end users themselves have to follow. Do you realize that most of these cyber attacks, most of them would be eliminated if the end users themselves just abided by some disciplines, had some education. But they don't want to do it because they don't think it'll ever happen to them. They just want to sit back and live in this comfortable world and do whatever they want to do and use 1, 2, 3, 4 for their password and make it easy. And, oh, we can't have executives have to do two-factor authentication because that's too complicated. Folks, I'm telling you right now, we got to change the rules. We got to change the rules or these lunatics are going to continue to raise havoc on businesses all across the land. Think about all these other companies that are out there, folks. You know, Kaseya was a pretty good sized company dealing with MSPs, but there's some bigger ones out there. What happens if they get attacked? And folks, don't think they won't. Hell, they might have already, but they might have mitigated it, who knows? But sooner or later, this is just going to ramp up. And when these bad actors realize that private equity owns all these companies, well, private equity's got some money. Folks, we got to figure out a way to change the game. And I think that game change starts when we all just answer this question honestly. What if private equity owned the military? We all know that would be stupid. And so the only other question we have to answer is cybersecurity a war? And if the answer, it is a war, and it's a war we better damn sure will win, then how do we do it? How do we fund it? And what's the future of it look like? Because I believe right now, the cybersecurity good intentions from a whole lot of companies have been somewhat hijacked by the hype of the big giant payout one day. And you know what? Businesses are built to be sold. Entrepreneurs build businesses. They have great intentions to solve problems around the world. And those are all good things. Private equity comes in and helps those entrepreneurs, cash out to a degree, helps them build up more and more of their business. But we're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about bankers, investment houses owning our security. And I'm just questioning whether or not there should be a better way. And I'd love some comments on this. I know y'all fear, the big private equity groups. Seems to me like it's almost like HP. Talk about HP, nobody wants to even comment on it because, HP's so big and powerful, they're going to come and get us. Oh, these private equity groups are so big and powerful, we better not say anything publicly because if we do, we might get fired. You know what? It's time that executives stood up, had some boldness, and started questioning things that need to be questioned. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let me just close with this. These folks are getting good. They're starting to sell franchises. They're outpacing the good people. And we just can't let it happen. Something to think about, my friends, because we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.